on our next speaker, Bob Pizzini, and I am not going to be doing the introduction because I know Bob has shared with us his introduction video that does him far more justice than my words. So Jonathan, if you could go ahead and play that, that would be terrific.
It's flight time! We're gonna get it on!
I'm Bob Pizzini, and I invite you to come fly with me and earn your wings.
Well, Bob, I have to say, watching that video takes me out of my comfort zone.
Okay, mission accomplished.
Very exciting to watch. And I am from San Diego, so that is a Navy town. We very much appreciate our members of our armed services. How old were you when you decided to join the United States Navy, and how long did that decision process take?
Sure. So I grew up watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau, black and white and then Technicolor, and Jacques Cousteau and his team diving the oceans of the world. So I became a certified scuba diver at the age of 12. I grew up without a father. My father died when I was 4 years old, and my mom did not remarry. So I didn't have that male figure, kind of, especially during my teenage years. But I did have sports, which did a lot for me and the associations that I had. But in high school, I was a bit wayward. I loved diving. I gave up sports, and I found this book in the high school library called Navy Diver. And pretty much from that point forward, and that was my senior year. So my senior year of high school, I knew that I just wanted to be a Navy diver. I didn't know there was such a thing until I discovered that book. And of course, that opened my eyes to a world that I had no idea existed.
I'm a giant champion of libraries, so I love hearing that story. And were you 18 when you went into the service?
Yeah, so I enlisted at the age of 18 back then, 1984. They had what's called delayed entry, so I committed while I was still in high school, and then upon high school graduation, went immediately to boot camp. Now, back then, you could not sign up to be a Navy diver. You signed up to be something else, and when you were in boot camp, you could take the pre-qualification test, which is basically a physical examination, running, swimming, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups. And then they look at your ASVAB scores. And again, I had no idea about any of this. I just knew that the recruiter said, you can take the test once you're in boot camp. So luckily, although I was not a stellar student in high school, my ASVABs were surprisingly high. It's Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. It's the test the government gives people to see what it is you're capable of doing for the government. And so I did very well on that test, qualified for almost anything. And so Navy, getting into the Navy diving program academically and physically was not a problem. And then a few years later, I discovered this wonderful thing called Navy EOD, explosive ordnance disposal.
I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? Where it's the final 10 seconds before the thing blows up and they have to clip the right cord and the light,
Cut the red wire. Yeah.
yeah, all the things. Is it that nerve-wracking, or is there so much prep that goes into it? Your poor mother, that's all I can think. I mean, we're a grateful nation, but I feel for her.
Yeah. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. It does take a steady hand. It does take calm under pressure, and that's part of the training and it's part of the vetting process. And we pretty much know which wire to cut before we approach the device, or we have ways of interrogating the device. But all that has to be done, number one, in a framework of a team, people who are watching, advising, guiding. There could be in Iraq and Afghanistan, you could be doing this in the middle of a gunfight or, some other form of hostility. So there's a calm that's required. And there's a training process and a process of developing a team and a team concept that is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. And it is the thing I am most grateful for in my life. It's been an exciting, incredible, fun career, and one that just opened up door after door after door, and now allows me to give back to my community. I retired 12 years ago after 26 years. So what I learned and lived in the military enables me to give back to my community and to give back to those who I have the ability to influence.
And I do want to talk to you about that and how you're using your experience for business, but I want to just ask a couple more questions about your
Sure.
experience in the Navy. So if you grew up kind of without who, for many young men, is their first leader, their father, how did you come to leadership? How were you able to recognize, oh, I want to be like that person, or what's that person over there doing? I'm not familiar with that. What was your first real experience around that?
So with me, that's going to be my hockey coaches at the youngest age, a mite 5 or 6 years old or 7 years old out on the ice. I remember those coaches who took this kid, and Mr. Kuda and Mr. Magard, Coach Kuda, Coach Magard, these coaches who took this kid who couldn't even stand up on ice skates, and had the patience to teach me how to skate, teach me how to hold a hockey stick, teach me the game, and apply enough discipline to where I showed up to practice and I showed up at the games. So I think that those were my first memorable male role models, if you will. And then after years of hockey, that just kind of duplicated and multiplied. But then there's also coaches in hockey and in other sports that you don't have fond memories of. And it's important to remember them as well, because you don't want to be that coach. I coach high school hockey. I've coached for just over 12 years. And in our coaches training curriculum, we say, don't be that kid's last coach. Make them want to come back next year. And that's really my approach to leadership overall, is be a leader that people want to work for.
And would you say that is the type of leadership that the military also espouses?
I would say in many cases, yes, but also in many cases, no. It's funny what you realize after you retire. No matter what your rank was when you were on active duty, we're all co-equals when we put on our civilian clothes. And those who built good relationships, again, regardless of rank, very high in rank or lower in rank, those who build good relationships in uniform are people who have fostered good relationships and generally do well after time in uniform. And those who use their rank and kind of push people around and don't think seriously about their future, they're not so connected. They're not so connected to the community. The community that I served with in the military on active duty, I am just as connected in the retirement community and somewhat with the active duty forces still as I was when I was in uniform. And I just can't tell you what an honor and a privilege that is, and how I cherish that. But there are people who did the same job I did who are just not welcome post military service.
Got it. I'm like you, team is everything. I'll go dig a ditch if I have a team to
Sure.
do it with. Like that's highly motivating for me. And so I wonder at what point, how long is it when you've met somebody, or when you're in the military and somebody was coming onto your team, how long before you knew like, oh, this person's going to be a great asset, or how do we move him along to something else or her along?
Yeah, so that those personality traits, positive or negative, they present themselves over time, and it doesn't matter if it's a Navy EOD team or a team in an office setting or a team on again, my hockey team, my high school hockey team. There's people who developed these qualities. I would say this good or high moral and ethical character, and this willingness to give. We generally develop those qualities in our childhood, like we just discussed. We're exposed to it, and we develop that trait early. I employ 40 people right now, and when we interview, we're looking for moral and ethical character. We're looking for traits that were developed in childhood, maybe early teens, but ultimately, when we're at the team level and it's time to be good at the skill set, it's too late to develop moral and ethical character. And I don't mean that in the absolute sense, but I do mean that, hey, we didn't hire you to develop moral and ethical character. We hired you to develop your individual skill set and then your ability to work with the team. So to your answer, how long? The timeline varies from person to person and team to team,
Okay.
but make no doubt, those negative traits will present themselves. And as soon as they do, a leader has to act. And those positive traits will present themselves as well. And as soon as they do, a leader has to act on those positive traits. You need to keep those people engaged and make sure that you're creating a culture and an environment where they really want to come and be on that team every single day.
So I want to turn out to how it is, what your business is and your coaching, et cetera, how it is you're using your skill set for businesses. And then I'm going to get into some specifics, but generally, what is it that you're doing when a company contacts you?
Sure. So I served again for 26 years. And after I got out, I started a business. I bought a franchise, or I created a franchise called I Fly Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving. Excuse me. So I'm sure that many of our viewers today have experienced iFly or heard of iFly or seen iFly. And if you want to have the absolute best iFly experience on the planet, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Jared. If you want to have the best iFly experience on the planet, that happens in Virginia Beach, Virginia, at our location. I was, part of my job in the military is military freefall, military skydiving. And we would travel to other venues around the country to perform this simulator training. Basically, the vertical wind tunnel, as it's generically called, simulates what it's like to free fall after you exit an aircraft. And that's very important in military operations, because we'll have 30 or 40 people exit an aircraft essentially on top of each other. You're all going out as quickly as possible to maximize your likelihood of landing on the objective. So we all go out on top of each other, and then you have to fly your slot. Right. I have to stay to the right. You're going to go to the left, the next person to the right. And we don't want to backtrack or slide over each other or get in each other's way, because we're traveling at over 120 miles an hour at night. So that can be dangerous. So we use these indoor skydiving facilities, these wind tunnels, to train in that free fall proficiency. Well, when we used those when I was on active duty, we would travel to different locations and we would conduct our training. We would see all the other military units, all the special operations units conducting their training. And then we would see mom, dad, and the kids, and the birthday parties and the tourists. We saw the civilian business model, which was just fun. Everybody was just having fun, including us. We're doing military training with a smile on our face. I mean, how often does that happen? So it was just a lot of fun. And we would always come back to Virginia Beach, where there is the highest concentration of Navy special operations. And we would say, why isn't one of those facilities here? So over the years, you heard rumor and you heard incorrect information, et cetera. I just got serious about it one day, looked into it. 6 years later, we opened our doors in Virginia Beach. We do a lot of military training at our location, but we also have all those birthday parties, those 10-year-olds, those 11-year-olds, those 12-year-olds, and these families. And we've had a 94-year-old Biggie Tucker fly with us. And it's just so rewarding. It's a wonderful business. So part two, to answer your question, is as I got into the business, I developed a team. I have 40 people on the team. So there's leadership, there's process, there's organizational structure and architecture and kind of all these things. And obviously, I brought a lot of my military background into my private sector business. And in most cases, that was good and right and successful. But in some cases, it was not the right thing to do. And I've had teammates help course correct me along the way, which is incredible. And because of that, we are a very high performing team. We spend little to no time on things that are not directly related to delivering the product or delivering the service, meaning we don't have, rumor and innuendo and water cooler, all these things that disrupt high productivity and committed teammates with high culture. So the rest of that is about 4 years into my business. I was looking for leadership development for my management team, and we did the other ones that are out there, and they were all very good, and I attended it with them. But it was not the leadership that I grew up with in the military. It wasn't the leadership that would train you up and get you ready to go and put you out there pretty much expecting you to fail. And when you failed, they pick you up and they dust you off and they say, all right, now what are you going to do differently? Go out there and give it another shot. And that's really the bread and butter of the leadership that I grew up with in the military. And I don't see that in the private sector. I see expectations that are unrealistic. I see disciplinary procedures that are unrealistic. I see leaders not investing in themselves, not investing in the fact that those are human beings you're leading. And these people we have wives and husbands and children, and we have parents who die, and we have a sick child and a dog that needs to go to the vet and a car that needs to go to the shop. These are all parts of people that we lead, and we need to acknowledge that and help lead in that component as well. And that was missing. So I put together a leadership offering designed to take place in conjunction with the flight chamber. So we developed this full day event. You come to iFly Virginia Beach. I facilitate a discussion, all things leadership. First thing in the morning, we do the flight experience, and that's kind of get out of your comfort zone, face your fear, tackle that anxiety. Tony Robbins has people walk across hot coals, which would certainly give me anxiety. And not sure I would do that. I would rather jump out of an airplane. But the flight chamber is a very similar experience, and it's just wonderful. I see people grow tremendously. I see families grow as a family. We see people with disabilities experience that growth. It's just a wonderful machine to enable people to take it to the next level and to gain confidence in themselves. We donate programs to our community to take children who probably couldn't afford to do this, and we teach them how to be very good at it. So all that resulted in a book that I published, came out this last December, currently an Amazon #1 bestseller, titled Elevate Your Leadership. And I'll take a pause there because I'm out of breath.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that answer, because I want to ask very specifically, as this recession unfolds and people are leading teams, they're leading companies where revenue is down, commissions are down, bonuses are down, maybe pay is being reduced or hours are being reduced. how does one lead a team from the good times to the difficult times? And if there are teammates that they want to keep on the team, they want to retain them, and there's this economic pressure, what can a leader do to keep the team together even when the revenue, the income is gone down?
Sure. So Sun Tzu, the Chinese general and philosopher who authored The Art of War, wrote that in war, prepare for peace, and in peace, prepare for war. So we know we're already in a recession and it's going to get worse. And so what a leader can do is prepare your people for rough times rather than say, I'm sorry, but your pay or your commission or your hours are being reduced effective tomorrow. You might want to say, team, I see troubled waters ahead. In a month from now, next quarter, 60 days, whatever the timeline is, be prepared to go through some tough times, which could include ... No action at this point, and we're wide open to suggestions and input from everybody, but this is what we're facing, and we've got some tough decisions to make. So number one, prepare, set realistic expectations for everybody. The other thing you can do, depending on your level of authority, I happen to own my own business, so I've got complete autonomy in taking action. But if you report to a board of directors, or there's other stakeholder interest, you might have to approach things a little differently. But number one, prepare your team for what's coming. Number two, do everything you can to protect every team member you have. In the COVID era, it was only a year and a half, 2 years ago. But of my 40 teammates, I got everybody together and said, there's so much fog right now, we can't see 2 feet in front of us. But here's what I know. I know that we're closed effective immediately. The governor closed every business in the state of Virginia. I know that I've got enough money in the operating account to keep everybody on payroll for 3 weeks. And I know that there is a national crisis that is going to change the way we think and the way we behave. For now, and this is before the CARES Act, this is before the P3 loan, this is after the double unemployment or whatever the unemployment compensation was announced. So now I've got people on my team thinking, all right, I'm going to leave and take this unemployment. So I asked everybody not to do that for 3 weeks. I have 3 weeks of operating money. I called my banker the same day and said, I'm not making my April payment. This was in March of 2020. I said, I'm not making my April payment. And he said, what are you talking about? I was like, what am I talking about? Have you seen what's going on? And by the end of the day, he called me back and said, listen, we're going to defer your principal and interest loan payments for at least 3 months until this fog starts to clear a little bit. I was able to keep my team on payroll for those 3 weeks. Right at the end of those 3 weeks, the military training that I mentioned earlier, the military called us up and said, we need you to be open to honor the contracts. You're key and essential. We're limited in our ability to travel and train, and we want to maximize our training during this time frame. That was a life preserver, if you will, from God, as far as I'm concerned.
That must have felt like, oh, my angels are watching out for me.
It was incredible. And I had the team on board to open. If everybody would have left and taken that unemployment, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So this kept us at the waterline, if you will. Well, every other ship in the harbor was sinking, and so were we. This activity kind of kept us right at the waterline. And then CARES Act and some other things, happened after that really enabled us to recover quite quickly. So again, long answer to your question. Number one, keep your team informed, let them know there's troubled waters ahead. And number two, invest in your team as much as you can, because that team is the people, they are the people that are going to enable recovery or survival.
Gotcha. Um, I think there are people who are writing that down. I know that some of the speakers are doing that as well. Um, how do we civilians show our appreciation in a meaningful way when we see members of our armed services?
Well, to say thank you for your service, I think is most appropriate.
Okay.
Like a lot of things, we've been hearing it for a number of years. And to some people, unfortunately, they seem a little fatigued from hearing that. I will
Okay.
never get fatigued from hearing that ever. And I just simply say, you're welcome. You know, it was an honor. And it was and it is. And if I was 18, I would serve again. So to simply say thank you for your service is more than enough. It's most appropriate. It's kind of, you know, what everybody's doing. To buy a service member lunch at a restaurant or in some setting where, you know, it's convenient, that is certainly appropriate as well. But I think a simple thank you
Okay.
is all it takes. If you have time and the opportunity to ask them about their service and their experience and allow them to share what life in uniform was like, I think is a great idea. Even asking former military to speak at Rotary or, you know, some of the other clubs and organizations, I get asked to speak all the time, and I'm honored to do it, no problem. And so I think the other thing, you know, some things that are shocking is less than 1% of the population serves or has served in our military, and 97 or 98% of the population of America is not directly related to a service member. So Americans in general really don't understand what life in the military is like. And I'm not faulting Americans, or it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. So to reach out, to host a military family, to send a care package. There's some wonderful organizations online to send a care package to a service member overseas. You know, you'll write a check for $30 or something, and somebody who's serving in some austere location around the world, missing home, will feel much better.
Awesome. Those are great. Thank you. I wasn't sure. So I really appreciate you affirming the best way to show our appreciation and
Yeah, thanks
gratitude.
for the question, for sure.
Absolutely. I know, Bob, you are offering a uh, consultation session. Jonathan, if you can either get the link up now or we'll send it out to all of the participants afterwards. I know there will be tremendous value in having that consultation with you, and whatever benefits can be had after that, I think that would be terrific. The whole point of today is I just keep reminding myself there is somebody listening right now who needs to hear this, and there's at least one person for whom this is going to be the thing that makes the difference. And that's really my commitment to what everybody has here. And Bob, I appreciate you sharing that commitment. So we'll be sure to give people the opportunity to connect with you. And thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's really been tremendous. And I'm a little bit tempted. In my hometown, there's one of the iFly places, and we had a family member that held their birthday party there. So I wasn't able to attend, but I'm a little bit tempted to give it a whirl.
Give it a whirl. Give me a call, you know, after the show, as they say, and we can make arrangements for you to visit as my guest. But for the absolute premier world experience, you have to come to Virginia Beach. Thank you for having me on, Rebecca. Thank you for hosting this event
Oh,
today.
thank you so much, Bob. Thank you.